Well, you know what? It seems like just about everybody but the cooks have had their chance to get served. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to remute everybody, and that's nothing personal. It's just so that in case there's a noise, there we go. Fantastic. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Please eat if you want seconds. It looks like there's plenty of food over there. I do want to just briefly note that we're joined by a number of folks on Zoom. So Jennifer Devine is online, along with David and Beverly Berry from Springfield, Jan Hayskamp, Mary Jo Douglas, and Ron and Fran Greenfield from Springfield are also joining us. So thank you. So if you see me looking down, I'm not avoiding eye contact. I'm trying to connect with everybody here. But thank you for coming tonight, an opportunity to share. I hope my biggest desire out of this evening is not that you see what Pastor Brian got to do, because he got to do some cool stuff, and I did, but I hope that what we walk away with is a sense of what Hungary is like, even just a glimpse, but even more important than that, some of what God is doing in the country of Hungary. Thank you. Bless you, G. And we'll have a chance about midway through the presentation to hear from John and Amanda Good talk about what's going on, how the church in Debrecen is working with the Ukrainian refugees and the situation there. So I know a lot of you are curious about that too. So just a lot of cool ways that God's at work. So with that, I'm just going to kind of try to move through this quickly, and with a chance later to, let's see, make sure. All right. There you go. All right. Always something you practice for, and then there we go. So briefly, why did we go in the first place? Why did we go, Rob? So Rob Kerbach, our associate executive, is here. Thank you so much for coming tonight. You drove a long way to be here, so I hope at least we send you home with some. All right, great. You know, in my own framing of this, and if I miss anything, please set me straight, but was to meet with our global servants, that is our missionaries in Hungary, and we have 5 of them, 5 adults anyway. There's a lot of young folks with them as well, to meet with our global servants and our regional partners to explore, all right, so how do we establish a long-term relationship with American Baptist churches of the Great Rivers region? Now, I don't need to tell you this because First Baptist Church was already on board, and with the Goods, you had a big part in blessing them as they were getting started. And so this is a long time relationship that you've had before I even came. Gabriel and I had met the Goods at Green Lake. We'd known them, but we didn't know them well. And so this was a wonderful thing. So partly was just to go and say, all right, what does this look like? How can we bless you? How can we be open to the ways that God is going to work and bless us just by knowing you and seeing what God's doing in your midst? To explore how we can support and encourage the ministry that's going on there, to be a pathfinders for how future mission teams can operate without creating a drain on the time and energy of our global servants. So what you may not know and wouldn't necessarily have a reason to think about is we send a mission team out, and the missionaries have to plan everything that we do. They have to house us and feed us and figure out all our logistics. And if something happens, they have to problem solve for us. That's a blessing to them often when we go and can do things. But you know what? It also, they've got their own ministry on top of that, right? And so we need to figure out how we can go in such a way that is actually a genuine blessing to them, in such a way that they're free to keep doing their ministry, and we can add to that instead of becoming their ministry for a period of time, if that distinction makes sense. So we wanted to say, all right, so if you see a lot of pictures of us doing touristy things, yeah, we got to do some touristy things. But part of it was, how do we navigate the transportation? How do we buy a railway ticket? How do we make arrangements for accommodations? How do we make reservations for a large group of people that may be coming, you know, hey, can you seat 10 people for dinner? That kind of stuff. So a lot of that is, you know, what do people need to see to get a sense of appreciating investigating the country and the culture and the history of Hungary. So that's being pathfinders. And then to prepare and equip other clergy and mission team leaders for future trips. So really, again, it goes back to the pathfinding. We're here to build on and let others follow. So again, just in case, where is Hungary? Google says it's right here. So it is really Central Europe, it's Eastern Europe. It is one of the former communist black countries. It is no longer. I did get asked that, and I understand the question. It's been a part of the EU for quite some time. It's a member of NATO. It's got its own stuff, but you know, this was a safe trip. Some of you were concerned, and I understand. Again, you'll notice that it borders Ukraine. And in fact, where we were staying is not far from the border of Ukraine. But again, the fighting is not happening near there. It's mostly just a sense of being aware of the need for people who are coming across. We have 3 groups of global servants, and on your tables I've printed out just some basic information. Feel free to share that or pass that around if you want to while I'm talking. We've got Carmela Jones, who works in Budapest, and it is Budapest if you want to, you know, there's a sh. And Rob will correct me if I'm wrong, because he got accused of being a spy in Budapest because his Hungarian was so good, wondering why is this Western guy who knows Hungarian so well doing here. So that was kind of fun. I think our guide came around to like, all right, you're a good guy, but yeah, that was really awesome. Larry and Rebecca Stanton live in a suburb just north of Debrecen, and it is not Debrecen, which is how I first pronounced it, and that's my Midwest kind of showing through there. It's Debrecen, and so they live just north of there. They have a ministry. Larry will go all over in ministering to rural communities, partnering with churches. Rebecca teaches in one of the schools, and Amanda and John Good, who we were able to spend most time with. They live in Debrecen as well, and we got to visit them several times. So it was a real blessing to get to spend more time with them, and you'll get to hear from them in just a few minutes. So this is Budapest. Notice, you know, it's Budapest. Here's Buda, here's Pest. It's 2 cities that became one, and they decided that Pest Buda didn't sound very good, so Budapest it is. This is generally the area that we were in. We walked over just about most of this. If you see this map, we kind of did the circle here, on foot and on train and subway and bus, all kinds of cool stuff. We got to explore that. So one of the first things that I noticed, coming into this with very little image of what Hungary was like, it was one of the exciting things for me personally, as I didn't have a lot of expectations. I knew just a bit of the history. I'd tried to read up a little bit ahead of time, was immediately struck by the beautiful architecture. There's so much of downtown Budapest is like this. You know, structures that go back hundreds of years. Much of the architecture goes back to around 1896, when Hungary was celebrating its millennial of its founding. That's so the 1,000-year anniversary of its founding. St. Stephen's Basilica, which is what you see on the left there, is 96 meters tall, or sorry, yeah. So it's very tall, same as the Parliament building in honor of the 1896 celebration. So that's, you know, there's only 2 buildings so far that are allowed to be that tall in Budapest. Right here, you'll notice one of the bridges over the Danube River. So that's part of this. You'll notice the tram that runs alongside the coast. It was a great, the shore of the river. It was a great way to see the city at sunset. It was very beautiful. And then you'll see the inside of St. Stephen's Basilica is incredibly ornate. All of that is marble, different colors of marble, gilt with gold. Do you remember how much gold went into that? Or it was just immense. It was saying how much of that. So this is the view from the Buda side, looking over into Pest. Buda was kind of the royal side of things, and Pest was the commercial city. This is looking at the Parliament building. You'll notice the spire there, 96. Again, you know, it's as tall as the Basilica. And again, in honor of the 1896 celebration. So this is the one of the buildings in the Buddha side, I forget what it was actually for. It's an art museum right now, I think. But what I wanted to point out is, do you notice the difference in architecture here with this side? This side was bombed in World War II, and the Soviets rebuilt it, but they didn't want to rebuild it as ornately because that's just frivolous of the decoration. So it was a little bit too bourgeoisie for them. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right, but there we go. So you can see the difference in architectural styles in things that were rebuilt during the Soviet era. And the Gothic style cathedral, the church, sorry, not cathedral, the churches of Matthias. This was a fun place, the Budapest Marketplace, one of them. The lower level, down here, they had all kinds of stores. You could get meats and veggies, cheese, fruit, beverages. The second story, or the second level, which we're kind of looking across, was mostly touristy shops. I got Gabriel's shawl there. I was smart. I took a picture. I said, which one? But the basement level, do you want to guess what's there? An Aldi's. There are Aldi grocery stores all over the place in Budapest and Debrecen. That was a bit of, I didn't expect that there. So there you go. This is a bit more of a somber note. This right here is one piece of a sculptural installation called Shoes on the Danube. And you may have heard, Budapest has a large Jewish population. It was much larger before World War II. Sadly, like a lot of countries that were occupied during World War II, there were a lot of Jews, Roma, that is gypsies, homosexuals, people that the Nazis didn't want, people that the Hungarians, some of the fascist groups in Hungary did not want. They were murdered. They were lined up along the Danube, forced to take their shoes off because the shoes were valuable. They could sell the shoes, but they didn't care about the people. So they were killed. Their bodies were dumped into the Danube. You see a memorial in bronze shoes along the Danube. And I showed this picture because I want you to see that people continue to put candles and they continue to sort of honor that monument and recognize it for what it is. That's the inscription in Hebrew above it, noting what this monument is for. It's also in Hungarian and also in English. The picture on the far left is a synagogue. It's one of the largest synagogues in the world. In fact, it's the Doheny Street Synagogue. We didn't get to go in. We tried. We walked a long way to get there, but we didn't go in because it was still in the Passover season. They had special hours that they were open and allowing people to go in. So we didn't get to go in this time. The night before we came home, we got to walk around a bit again in Budapest at night, which was fantastic. It was beautiful. We caught a bit of a concert in a plaza where I don't know what kind of music to classify that as, but it was fun. And again, you see St. Stephen's Basilica lit up at night. So here we go. This is the Google map of Debrecen, downtown Debrecen. Just to get a sense of, there's sort of the main drag. There's a church. This is the church you're going to see in a number of the pictures. Over, I believe, this way is the the English-speaking International Baptist Church that the Goods helped to start. What's marked as Baptist Church on there is the Zapanos Church, that is the Hungarian church, which was sort of the home church for John and Amanda, and some of the leaders of which we got to meet with, and they also were integral in sponsoring and making the international church happen. So neat partnership that we got to see there. So this is Debrecen. This is all around that Reformed church. There's an incredibly large Reformed movement in that part of Hungary. Eastern Hungary, I believe Western Hungary is a little bit more Catholic and Orthodox, but so there's a lot of that around, and you get a sense of just how beautiful it is, and that's why I shared these. You've got wide open plazas. It's incredibly pedestrian friendly, bike friendly. It's amazing to get around in. I suppose if you had a car, maybe not so much fun at times as the traffic gets larger, but also just wanted to see how many flowers. They would plant flowers everywhere, just beautiful. They also had markets. This is where I bought some of the paprika that you got to enjoy in the goulash. I dramatically overestimated how much they give you in a bag. So I bring this big bag of hot goulash, or sorry, hot paprika home to Gabriel, and she's like, do we have a container for that? I'm like, sure. So then she starts filling all these glass containers, like used up about every jar that we had in there. So so those online in Zoom I'm screen sharing with them so they can see it. Thank you so much, Joyce, for making sure. Yeah, that they, bless you for that. Those of you can see it. The screen sharing is working, right? Thumbs up, or do we need to fix? Okay, thank you. Just checking. So yeah, this was a really fun. It's great to see people this is where you might get some fresh veggies like you go to a farmer's market here. Again, this is a shot of the Reformed Church and the seal. Interesting, you might notice that on the city seal, you see the sign of a lamb standing on the Bible holding a Christian flag. So there's no, the separation of church and state and the relationship between church and state is a very interesting dynamic in Hungary. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, but you can just see it's part of the history, it's part of the culture, part of their aspirations. The heart of why we went was to build partnerships. And this is a picture, a group shot of us gathered around a dinner table at John and Amanda Good's house. They were amazing hosts. So you see myself, you see Rob and Patty, our executive minister, interim executive minister for the Great Rivers region. Then you see Amanda Good with Janos, who is the current pastor at the Zapanos Church, Shandor, and he's sort of a long-term lay person at the church who recently became part of their pastoral staff, if I'm understanding that correctly. And their translator was, his name, I wrote that down, Istvan, thank you. And Istvan, I had a special connection to because he works for John Deere, or worked for John Deere. His son lives in the United States. And I said, well, then have you been to Rock Island to the John Deere Museum? He says, oh yes, I've been to Illinois, not once, by which he meant many times. So that was pretty cool. And so we had this great conversation around the table of just kind of getting to know each other. We had questions like, so what are you finding exciting? Where are you finding God at work? But also some deeper questions like, what are some of your struggles? What are some of your hopes? And what's going on in the church that you're paying attention to? And lo and behold, many of the questions on their hearts are the questions on our hearts. As leaders and as church members here, we're asking many of the same questions. We have many of the same concerns, and which really I think was helpful to say, we've got a lot in common. How can we listen for what God is saying to us together? So this was great. It was an encouragement to keep talking, keep praying above all, and trying to discern what's God opening up in the midst. So this was I felt like it was a great opportunity, a great first step. We spent the bulk of an afternoon just kind of talking and enjoying that time together, praying for one another. It was fantastic. Also, we went and got to have some good time with our global servants over there. We didn't get to meet with Carmela Jones. Unfortunately, sadly, and please keep her in prayer, she had a death in the family. So while we were on our way over, she had already come back to the United States to be with her family in this time. So we didn't this time get to meet with her, but you'll see Larry and Rebecca Stanton, Patty in the middle, and then Amanda and John Good. They're recording a video. And so Rob is operating the camera and the tripod there so that they could talk about their ministry, sending it back. And if you are connected on Facebook, you might want to look up the Great Rivers Region website because many of those videos have been posted there along with some updates. but we just had a great time to talk about, all right, so what are some of those questions? What are they doing? What's God doing? What are some of the opportunities to partner that might be things we can keep talking about and keep pursuing? So this was good. This is our team and the goods in front of the Zapanos Church. I believe it's right before it's either before their evening service or the Bible study, but I think it was their evening service because you can kind of see that was the evening that was rainy. And so those of you who were here on that Sunday when I got to zoom in, I was standing outside the church in the rain because otherwise indoors, I was standing in their cry room with a speaker right next to me. And I'm like, I'm either gonna cause a disruption there. I don't wanna turn down I'm just gonna sneak out. Say hello to everybody. It was amazing how easily that worked. So thank you, tech team here for making that possible. But again, just an example of what it means to partner here. Now, many of you are wondering, so what was the Ukrainian situation? Being so close to Ukraine, Larry had been to the border. I believe John's been to the border too, but Larry travels more often. Not all the time, it's a long trip, but when he's needed, he will go up there. I think, did he say it cost $100? Like in gas and travel expenses to go to the border. So it's not something he does casually, but when needed. But they're facilitating, I believe he said something like 500 people crossing that border a day, Ukrainian refugees, and most of them will pass through quickly to the EU for multiple reasons. But I want to highlight this picture. Some of you saw this. These are the quilts that First Baptist Church in El Paso made and then gave to us. I know, Lindsay, it's good to see you here. So your church, you made these, they're beautiful. We couldn't wait to open up the suitcase and have John and Amanda see these, and their faces just lit up. And Patty had stocked another suitcase that was donated. The suitcase was donated by the church, full of just goodies. You ask Gabriel sometime about the value of people bringing stuff, or your sister bringing like Mountain Dew and just comfort foods. So that was great to be able to share that. This picture on the left is it's the airport in Budapest. As I took that as we were leaving, but basically it's saying if you're Ukrainian and you need food, they will get you a meal at the airport as you're traveling through. So there's a lot of people extending hospitality, and it was really great to see. I'm going to stop the video for a moment. Oh, somebody else is, Glenn's joining us. I'm going to stop this presentation for a moment to share a 7-minute video, if I can. Table is never big enough. All right, here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna thumbs up if those of you online, you're seeing a video now, you're not, okay, thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this and let you hear from John and Amanda about what's going on in Ukraine.
Hi, we're John and Amanda Good. We serve with International Ministries. We live in Debrecen, Hungary. We're about an hour from the Ukrainian border.
When the war broke out, our church family was ready to receive refugees. We had several places for sleeping in the building set up. Families were prepared to bring food in and supplies. Most of the families who have stayed with us were just overnight. But we were privileged to have one particular family stay with us for almost 3 weeks. I had received a text message asking if we could host a family. They didn't have another place to go because the facilities that were providing lodging and hospitality wouldn't take this particular family because they had tested positive for COVID. Well, that was not a concern for us. We had our vaccines and actually probably our round of COVID itself. So it was no problem. I went to the border to pick up this mother and her 2 young children. Clearly they were exhausted from the journey. We brought them back to the house. I drove as careful as I could without car seats. And we introduced them to our family, and for several days, they didn't eat well. They were clearly in a state of shock. But over time, over a few days, they began to engage with us. We began to hear and see how God was at work.
And again, just the faith and trust of the mother. They were really so concerned because the dad, the father of the family, could not cross the border. So he also has stayed just across the border in Ukraine, but across the border from Hungary. And he's helping with other refugees. And that's been a good thing. And they were in video communication an awful lot. But just so hard for them to be separated. And the little one is 18 months old and the older child is 5. And so the kids, they're kids and they can tell something's going wrong, but they still have all this energy and fun. And so it began to be the family project to try to entertain the children and keep them busy so that mom could rest and recover. And she said, I just need to think. So we were able to organize a lot of play time for the kids. And in fact, one of our friends speaks Russian, and she came over to take the little girl out to play, and they could talk, and that was really good. The mom, most of the time with us, was using Google Translate, and we'd go back and forth on the phone, so that was pretty interesting.
We also found it useful that we have a pet with us, actually a few pets, but one of our pets is a dog. His name is Pepper, and it turned out that the children really liked our dog Pepper. So Pepper sort of helped make the children feel comfortable and welcome the family into our home.
I don't know about helped. He was practically a doggy babysitter, so that was really fun. But after that, the mom and I started coordinating about what did they need. And they were very reluctant to tell us anything, but the first thing was the mom had left her contact lenses and she needed those, so we ordered the lenses. And then after that, we started making lists, and in the beginning they were quarantined, so she would give me an idea of the sizes or styles that they would like, and I'd go buy some stuff and bring it home. And it was good to be able to buy some things there. When they arrived, the mom and the 2 little kids, they only had 1 duffel bag. You can imagine a family of 3 not knowing what to do. So thankfully, with a lot of help from our church and from people at home, we were able to provide car seats and stroller and clothing and coats and shoes and diapers and, well, a lot of food, and with God's grace, a lot of love.
Yet perhaps the greatest provision really didn't come from us, ultimately from God, but we were able to find another family here in Hungary. They live outside of Budapest, actually, where they were hoping to find a Ukrainian family they could share. They had an apartment that's connected to their home, and they wanted to share it with a Ukrainian family. And so we learned about this particular family and shared this with the family that was with us, and it was almost a perfect match. And so we took the family to Budapest, and it was a beautiful space. Kids her own age, she was able to enroll in the school, receive her official documentation to stay in Hungary, and we have been delighted. Of course, we get the updates on how they're doing, but we have been delighted to see how God has faithfully provided for this family in ways we couldn't have even imagined. And it's been an encouragement to us to just see in the midst of this time how faithful God really is.
Yeah. Even with the small things, 2 days before the family left, the family was here in our International Baptist Church in Debrecen, and the little girl was in Sunday school, which was kind of fun because she spoke Russian, the teachers spoke English, the other children were speaking Spanish, and that day Korean, I think, so it was an interesting day. But they were learning about Jonah and the whale, and the little girl had colored a cute little picture, and then she said she wanted to send it to her daddy. Well, how could that happen?
What are the chances?
What are the chances?
That on that Sunday, we had a family that was visiting from Ukraine.
Not just any part of Ukraine, but from the same city where the dad was staying. So she didn't know the address, so we folded up the paper, put the dad's name on it, and handed it over to the young woman that was going back to Ukraine. And within a few days, after they had gone to Budapest, the mom sent us a picture of her husband holding this picture that the little girl had drawn for her daddy. How could that happen? It's so amazing that God cares about all of the little things too.
A beautiful moment in the story of what is happening now. Our church family is embracing the opportunity to be on mission with Christ here in Debrecen, Hungary. In fact, our new church has acquired an apartment that is currently ready for the next Ukrainian family, the next guests that God will send us to care for.
We are so grateful for your prayer and your support of International Ministries.
You are making a difference in the lives of so many people. Please continue to pray for the people involved in the midst of this conflict and know that Jesus is at work.
Let's just stay there. There we go. All right. One of the stories they didn't have time to tell, there's a longer video. They didn't have time to tell in this is, you notice that the father could not cross the border. That's because if you are older than 18 and younger than 60 and you're not the father of a large family, like many children, you're not allowed to leave because they need you on call potentially to go and serve. And so there was a family, they tell the story, the dad was able to come across because he had many children, but they had to leave their 16-year-old, they had a son that was just of age that could not cross the border. And just telling the heartbreaking story of the dad offering to take his son's place, but that they wouldn't allow it. So it's hard. But the son, again, like this other person that they were describing, the husband of this second family, is staying at a church across the border in Ukraine. So that doesn't mean that just because he can't cross, they're automatically enlisted in, the army or the territorial forces, whatever they're doing. But he's staying at that church, and he has taken on the role of helping other refugees who are preparing to cross. So the church is being the church on both sides of that border, and doing faithful work. And just to note that the support that's flowed in through this church, from the region, from across the United States for Ukraine has been a tremendous response. So that's one of the ways that we're seeing God at work. Continue. So again, you see the mattresses. That's how this is the Zapanos Church. The space is used when it's needed to for refugee families that are coming through. Right now, they're getting it set up for their Bible study. And you'll see on the left, that's the apartment building where the church is renting an apartment for folks to use. And you saw the interior shots, so I'm not going to dwell on that, except you'll notice that the elevator is a bit small. Somehow we all fit in there, but we needed to take a selfie to commemorate that. This is a little bit out of order because this church grew out of the Bible study. It was launched from a Bible study, which was in itself a discerned ministry between the Goods and the Zapanos Church, saying we need a ministry to the English-speaking students, the undergrads, the graduate students, the PhD students that are coming to study in Debrecen. They need a Bible study. They need a ministry that draws them together. So they launched that. And then out of that eventually came the International Baptist Church, which we got to visit and worship with on Sunday morning. This is John co-pastors with a man named Gary. Gary's a Southern Baptist missionary, and the two of them lead this particular congregation. And here they graciously prayed over us at the end of the service as we were each able to bring our own greetings and offers of blessing from you all, from the region to them. And just a shot of their children's space in the back. It's kind of like a storefront church. It's not huge, but it's really cool how they have it all set up. You can see part of their worship space. They're missing a few people. A number of folks were gone because it was the time where the Orthodox are celebrating Easter. And so a number of people who are part of their community were in Budapest celebrating at sort of home churches. This is our Evan. And so this is one of the guys there was doing a great job getting everything going. You can't quite see it in the back. It's a little fuzzy. Those are wireless receivers that were donated from what church, Rob? You took a close picture. First Baptist of Decatur. So you'll notice that we had to upgrade our equipment because the FCC changed their frequency requirements. Well, so did Decatur. They had a bunch of stuff that they couldn't use anymore, but they sent it over here. They're using it for their AV setup, which is fantastic. Pastor John was giving the sermon that morning. It was fantastic. And I need to mention a man named Solomon who was, Samson, was sharing one of the values of this church, because it's an international church, is to be aware of what's going on in the global church. And so every Sunday, they take time to talk about groups of Christians who are experiencing hardship or persecution, not just mentioning it in a brief prayer that in passing, but they take time to explain not just what's happening, but how the church is responding. I really love that, because it's not just poor me, it's how is God responding? What are the needs? What we can be praying for, but how can we also see how God is at work in those circumstances and sustaining them and supporting them in the midst of it? So that was a powerful witness. Here's some shots from the Bible study. They were just about to start. We got the first session of a multi-session series on dating, which was really interesting in an international context. When they did introductions, I didn't count how many people there were. I would guess by the time all was said and done, somewhere between 40 and 50, but from 13 different countries. South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, America. So it was fantastic. And all kinds of good snacks. If some of y'all have like your favorite things, like over there, I am going back for their paprika coated peanuts. That is like a junk food I need more of in my life. Probably not, but I think so. So there's just a neat opportunity. This is the sanctuary of the Zapanos Baptist Church. We got to see a special service of theirs in the evening. So we've got our annual meeting coming up on the 15th, and I don't want to scare any of the folks because it's one of the times that we elect our officers and vote on everybody. But I will say this service was where everybody who is going to be voted on to serve as in a position of leadership in the church had to stand up and give their testimony and explain why they felt God was calling them or had prepared them for that position. So yeah, that was pretty wild. And then the pastor gave a great sermon on our need to discern who God has lifted up for a particular position. So it was wild that Amanda and John were translating for us. And, we were kind of sitting in between. Rob and I were sitting. John was sitting in between us. So he'd whisper to you, and then he'd whisper over to me, and then it'd kind of back and forth. It was pretty cool. This is one of the main ministries. The church sponsors the school, and that is completely different than the way that we have it here. And we're trying to wrap our minds, how does that work? The best that I could figure it out, and I asked John about this, and he kind of said I'm more or less it's somewhat on the right track, in the sense that we think of public schools and private schools. Think of it as there's no public schools, but the government will make sure that you get to go to the private school of your choice, as long as they've got the capacity to take you. So there's a need for different organizations, different churches to sponsor the schools for the kids to go and get their education. And so the churches, they were seeking a Baptist church. The Zapanos Church stepped up, saw that need, took on the leadership of a school. Not everybody that is involved in it is a Christian, but many are, and they see it as a mission field. They do incorporate some religious elements in the school day, but then they have after school things. The key thing to remember is that the parents are choosing to send their kids to this particular school. There are humanist schools, there are Catholic schools, there are, this kind of school and that kind of school. And no, I'm sure it's not perfect, but I think it's important to just kind of understand in this context, that's how that works. And that there is this opportunity to minister. One of the critical things is that they're really interested in people that speak English. It's a skill that they want, which means a lot of folks like us that don't know Hungarian, which is, how many people know Hungarian? It's really hard. So much respect, Rob, that Rob has put a lot of time into being able to navigate at least basic interactions in Hungarian. It's fantastic. But there's a lot of room to say, I don't know it. I'm not going to know much. You can get the basics. Hello, hi, thank you. But a lot of interaction in English. There's room for people to come and listen to kids read. We got in, this is a 4th grade classroom. You get to see Rob is working with the kids there. Amanda took a bunch of these pictures. And this is Amanda working with a bunch of 1st graders. She's doing English enrichment classes after school. And so there's a lot of opportunities to kind of partner with that and to build on to what that is. But we got to play games. We were doing, you know, what's that game where you tape the thing to your head and they have to guess what you are? They were doing that with animals in English. And so they had to, in English, I would say, well, what does it eat? Or what color is it? And, you know, they were getting into that. So it's that kind of thing that sometimes you just need an extra hand with. So I get to see 4th graders are 4th graders everywhere. And so you get to see, you know, this is what the school looks like. Apparently it's like a 15-year contract. So they have the school from the government, the opportunity, there's sort of, I don't know whether it's like licensing or however they describe that, but they've got 5 years left. And so there are some things that probably need worked on in the school, but they're trying to decide how much do we invest in that infrastructure. Will we be able to continue after the 5 years are up? All of those sorts of questions coming up for them. So that was our mission. Now some of the fun stuff, at least for me, one of the things I am interested in is food. Rob, I heard you describing the chimney cakes. These things, they're $1. They are so good. This is bread. This is our guide. We did a 4-hour walking tour of Budapest, the second full day that, or the first full day that we were there, our second day in Budapest. And he bought us these. They are coated in like sugar and cinnamon. So like, think of like cinnamon toast. Like a big roll of cinnamon toast, but you can get these at stands everywhere, covered in all sorts of stuff, whether you like chocolate or coconut or walnuts or whatever it might be, and they will fill these things with ice cream, friends. You need to go to Budapest and to Debrecen and have this stuff. So this is a Hungarian goulash. This is what you had tonight, at least our version of it. Gabriel, the spicy was spicy. It was really good. I noticed there's none left of the spicy. So friends, there's a little bit of leftover. Ron, Fran, we may be able to help you afterward, but not the spicy stuff is out. This is from a place called the Flaska, which I believe is one of your favorite places in Debrecen. This is it sounds like I'm doing like a foodie tour here, but I just want you to say, this is not strange food. So this is a pork chop that's been breaded in like a potato batter on top of garlic roasted potatoes. Friends, you feel like you're eating like a king, but it's just like, it's $8. There's just a really inexpensive, nice dinner. And I just share that to say, sometimes you wonder, like if you're thinking about, well, what's it like? Is it accessible? It's very Midwest food friendly. They've got coffee. We had coffee with John and Amanda on the last full day that we were there in Debrecen. And, you know, we had gas station meals too. So I'm trying to show this to balance out. Like sometimes when we're traveling, you just go and you get gas station food and it's a sandwich and some chips, and that's awesome. The ice cream was amazing. We had gelato a few times. This one place in Budapest will shape it like a flower for you. And the picture on the left, I just had to put in there because it's the worst meal that I had in Budapest. Thank you. Yes, I just needed something light after eating so much. So I just needed a sausage and some bread. And apparently they thought I needed a lot of mustard because that is a really, really large container of mustard. And the lemonade, which is like what Gabriel made for us, is kind of, it's lemonade, but made with carbonated water, instead of what they call over there as still water. And this was interesting. This is Hungarian gyros. I think it's more like a Hungarian take on a horseshoe, you know, because it's chicken gyro meat on top of French fries and lettuce and cabbage and onion, and it was good. But it didn't taste like any gyro that I've ever had before, but that's okay. It was really cool. Good stuff. And again, just another shot of lemonade. I did try, we went to McDonald's. You guys got some dessert. I said, I've got to try. I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try to order one of the unique things there. Instead, I got daunted because they didn't have the electronic kiosks. And the poor person taking my order, I was trying to read it off the menu, but just because you can see the words, the letters, doesn't mean you know how they go together and make sounds. So it took a bit of pointing, but I did get a cheeseburger and a Coke, which is not called a Coke, it's a cola. So you ask for a cola if you want a Coke. No problem. We can translate these things. Transportation was really neat. I want you to notice how clean everything is. That's a subway station. It was spotless. So much of Debrecen and Budapest was just immaculate. It was great. I had to invite the second picture. I don't know if it fully registers. That's an escalator that goes down into the subway. It was built during the Soviet era, so it was built as a bomb shelter, so it's deep. And the escalator is steep. As you're on it, you soon lose sight of any reference. You know, so if you're staring straight ahead, you're staring at a wall like this. If you look down, all of a sudden the floor looks like it's, if you go, you want to hang on to the handrails is all I'm going to say about that. But it was still very cool, very efficient. You see the trams, the electrified buses, the places where you just buy your ticket. You can do it in English. So, you know, the transportation, you buy the ticket. You can buy a group ticket, so you cover up to like 5 or 6 people, ride as much as you want. They don't check your tickets. You just walk on and walk off as much as you need to. Occasionally there will be a check, and if you don't have your ticket, you're in trouble. You know, that's where you pay a fine or something like that. But it's so efficient to just get on and off. It's great to get around in. And it was super easy for us to navigate around in Debrecen. We could either walk wherever we needed to, and if we wanted to save time, you just hop on a tram. Pretty easy. And that's what that looks like on the inside. And Amanda took a picture of us waiting for the tram in Debrecen to get back to the Panzio, which is where we stayed for most of the time while we were in Debrecen. Just wanted you to see that this is where mission teams would probably be staying. Something like this. It's clean, it's neat, it has Wi-Fi. Most of them serve breakfast. So it's something that's very accessible. The bathroom is great, you know, so it's not something, this is not necessarily a hardship tour. I'm not saying that there would be not things that you adjust to, but friends, if you've not been on a mission trip before, this is not a difficult experience to engage in. Is what I'm trying to say, that there's plenty of good mission work to do, but that it's very accessible. Travel, just as, you know, we were packed in like sardines on the way over, but came back. The plane was about half full, so we could kind of spread out and enjoy ourselves. So earlier, one of the folks on Zoom was asking what the trip was like. It was about 7 hours to Heathrow and then about 2 hours from Heathrow to Budapest. And this is, you know, the countryside, driving. Rob drove us. You kind of had to, because they only sold you sticks. And you were the only one that felt really good about that. And so thank you for doing that driving. You would not have wanted me to do that. So I got to look out the window and take pictures, but you know, it's very agricultural. It felt, aside from the mountains, a lot like Illinois. You know, farms, you know, rolling fields, that kind of thing. It was very nice. So what next? And hopefully not getting ahead of myself, but as I understand it, I will only take responsibility for myself, that in the fall, the plan is to have a clergy trip for clergy. In the spring, another orientation trip for laity. You know, for us, we'll continue in partnership with the region and with IM. What does that look like, especially with John and Amanda Good, whether that means connecting with and helping with the International Baptist Church there, their young adult ministry, or through the school. We'll also be exploring what does it look like to partner with and find opportunities with the Hungarian church that is involved in many, many ministries there. So that's, you know, English language, listening to reading, playing games, teaching games. It's 7:30. I know some of you have a practice that you need to go to, so I want to just say thank you for coming. Those of you who are able to stay, want to stay, I'll be glad to try to answer some questions, and those online, please feel free to, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing at this point.